Hello, my name is Robert Denard. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor and a master's licensed alcohol drug counselor. So today I was just talking about some of the psychoeducation that I do with clients to help reduce some stigma, as well as to talk a little bit about why we might use some skills such as deep breathing or stretching or other types of skills. I find it's helpful as far as explaining it in the way that I'm about to, as it takes away some of the person out of it and brings it more into it's a human thing. So a lot of this I pulled from the polyvagal theory. So I'm no expert in the autonomic system or the nervous system, but as far as the polyvagal theory goes, I could go to a restaurant and be able to order off the menu pretty comfortably. So again, I'm not an expert, but I have some knowledge on it. So basically, it talks through the three different parts of your nervous system. So you have the dorsal vagus, which is around 500 million years ago. It started to show up in living things. So it's a pretty old system. So in this system, it's when things had to uh, immobilize, so collapse, shut down. Uh, Basically, if nobody notices or sees me, I'll have a better chance of surviving. So do just the bare minimum to survive. Um, Around 400 million years ago, that's where we had the sympathetic nervous system kick in. So it's a little different from the parasympathetic dorsal vaga. The sympathetic is more about mobilizing. Your eyes and ears kind of perk up. You're focused on things that might harm you. So this is where fight or flight, as many of us have talked about throughout time, have come into play. And that's around 400 million years ago. So around 200 million years ago, we had the different part of the vagus nerve, the ventral vagal nerve. So this is what allows us to feel connected, calm, safe to our environments. It's kind of like creatures could figure out like there's some safety in numbers. So, and to kind of go with the time frame, people are around 5 to 7 million years ago is when they were created. So, but these systems were in place in living things way before that. So thankfully, as people, we've developed more than that. So we have all of this extra brain that a lot of creatures don't have or didn't have 200 million years ago. It allows us to do beyond just working with this nervous system. So let me share the screen. All right. So now that we have the screen shared, this is a basic worksheet that you'll find if you even just do Google for the polyvagal theory. It goes through the different parts of the nervous system we just talked about. So a lot of times I bring this up because when you explain it in this terms, it lets people know, like, gosh, this happens to everybody. Again, it's not just a me thing. So a lot of times when you're explaining how to deal with coping skills, and you're talking them through it, they're only talking about their experience. Like it's very individual, and there can be some benefits to that. But when it comes to stigma, you want them to feel like it's not just them; they're not alone. And this helps explain that it's your nervous system, things that have been around before even humans were developed. So if you go back to the ancient parasympathetic over here, the top, the freeze, so the dorsal vaga kicks in. This is where clients will have times where they feel like there's nothing I can do, just shut down and just keep alive, basically. That's that part again that you don't want to be noticed. Uh, Dissociation happens here a lot. So this is a time or a period where you feel there's nothing I can do that's going to help me get through this. All right, so dissociation, numbness, depression, conservation of energy, helplessness, shame, shutdown, hopelessness, preparation for death, trap. You'll also get, it'll be a big feeling of being overwhelmed. This is a lot of times this is where you get your self-injurious behavior, cutting, burning, as well as some of your substance use behavior and even your suicidal ideation. It's where there's nothing I can do that's going to help. I'm hopeless. And so you resort to things that make an immediate change. So those addictions, cutting, and even the thought of death, like at least if there's nothing else I can do, that's the option left. Either sit in this frozen moment or I could die. And sometimes that option can feel like the better option for people. So I think what's important to know is when you're in freeze also, because everything's shutting down, that includes parts of your brain. Think about it when there's a big accident and you have like someone with a bad cut or something on their arm and they go into shock. It's kind of like they're there, but they're not there. Right. So you do a lot of time of just sitting with them and working with them until they kind of get a hold of themselves and get out of the shock. But shock's a good example of freeze. It's where you don't really even notice what people are saying, what's going on around you, or like in the old Charlie Brown shows, that teacher that goes, wow, 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 wow. I mean, the teacher's saying something, but you just can't really understand it. You might be able to hear the words, you might be able to know someone's talking to you, but you're just not able to like take it in and soak it in. That goes for body language. You don't really notice those things because you really are just shutting down. So the second oldest part, the sympathetic nervous system, again, around 400 million years ago, fight or flight. As therapists, I think we've talked about this one a lot. So the main things are like panic, fear, anxiety, worry and concern, rage, anger, irritation, frustration. So this is an important part. This is where creatures started to learn, I don't just have to freeze. Like there's something I can do. I can either fight through something or try to get away from something. So when this does, kind of like now, whenever I do presentations, I get into fight or flight mode. Breathing increases, heart rate increases, blood pressure goes up. The one thing that I think is important to know, when you're in fight or flight, you're not trying to have relationships, right? So your senses, in particular your eyes and your ears, they can become alert to look for danger. So it's not about observing your environment or being mindful. It's about what's happening, be alert, something bad's going to happen, and you're on guard. Your senses are on guard. You're just alert. You're ready to go. A lot of times you get that tension in your shoulders. Hands are fidgety. If you can see, I'm rocking in my seat, so that's because my legs get nervous too. So you get that energy, your legs, your hands, your arms, your shoulders, and that's because those are the things that are going to help you fight or flee, do fight or flight. So a lot of your blood leaves certain areas, your stomach or other areas, and goes into these parts of your body that you know are going to help in these situations. So shoulders forward. I think that's one of the more common ones, shoulders, neck, arms, legs. It doesn't mean you have to be moving, but that energy and that blood's there. It's causing that tension there. And that's part of fight or flight. So the other part that we always try to go to, which is a newer part, this is the youngest part that's only 200 million years old, is the social engagement. So this is where you'll have connection, safety, feel oriented to your environment. One of the good things about this part is it lets you have a chemical called oxytocin, which is involved in allowing you to create social bonds. So this is the part of where mindfulness. I think most of us here know about mindfulness. So this is how do you connect and be a part of the moment in that way. So a lot of times when I explain this, it is helpful because remember, this is your autonomous nervous system. It just happens. It doesn't have thought. It's been around for way, way before humans were developed. And part of being mindful is knowing what's happening with your body. So when you talk about it in this way, it helps people be mindful and aware of what part of your nervous system is being activated. So one thing that I have found in talking to hundreds and hundreds of clients over my time is sympathetic nervous system, dorsal, fight or flight and freeze. It really likes bad posture. So when you're in fight or flight, your shoulders will be tense, rounded forward. And as you go into freeze, it's more of like a collapse forward, which is still like roll forward into a ball, lose energy. So one thing I teach clients to do is really fix your posture when you're doing any of your exercises. it can be really helpful to, since all your blood and energies in your shoulders and legs, to do some stretches. The rainbow stretch you've heard of from a lot of people, wiggle it out, whatever you feel is your style for teaching clients on really how to regulate those areas that are tense and hold that energy. On legs, it could just be rubbing your upper legs. And so you're doing it thoughtfully. You're just bringing thought back into these parts of your body, grabbing your ankles and pulling it toward your butt to do that stretch for your upper legs. Anything that you can think of that again, bring thought to those areas, get the blood back to where it belongs, try and settle those areas down, because it's your nervous system. It's not going to pay attention to what you're thinking. Like the first response it's going to do is react to what you're doing physically. So I teach it in this way to hopefully help it. It definitely doesn't take over the part where you have to do your other therapies, DBT, IFS, EMDR, any therapy that you can think of. You can build these into it, because it really is about awareness. The more awareness a client has, the better you can explain things so they feel they're not alone. It's not just them. I think the better off those things are. The other part that I learned, which was from Astrid, who was a great therapist while she was here in youth and family, make sure you really focus on that diaphragmatic breathing. There's something about, which Astrid showed me in doing her trauma yoga, there's something about the diaphragm going all the way up and down and the stomach going out when you breathe that really resets this autonomous nervous system. It helps slow it down. And again, it's not the smart part of us. Thankfully, we are smart individuals. These clients that we have, they're working with you. They're working with very, very great supports. So you can use those parts to once you're aware of this, to implement and figure out ways to regulate. So I think a lot of this part is when you get activated this way, it's implicit. It just happens. So the more you do work and just noticing it, mindfully noticing it even, the more explicit it becomes. And as it becomes explicit and known and aware, you can begin to show clients how to co-regulate in sessions, like teach them the skills, do it with them. And those two things combined can lead to it down the road to become self-regulating. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I wanted to give you kind of a brief introduction to what I do for psychoeducation at the beginning of my sessions, since some of you will receive or work with clients that I've worked with in the past. And I want to thank you for your time.